What's up, Faithfully's back again with another awesome video, gentlemen, and today we're talking about Venom in Spider-Man 2 and why he doesn't work and where we can learn from his mistakes. Now, Venom has had a lot of poor adaptations, and while I don't think this is the worst one, I mean I can definitely see why people see him as the worst adaptation. I I don't see him as the worst adaptation, but he has a lot of significant flaws. And I'm gonna tell you about the flaws he has and how I would fix them to the best of my ability. All right, let's go. So there's about three major problems with Venom in this game. That is his screen time, characterization, and presence. Now, the screen time is pretty obvious. You played the game. Venom is like almost barely in the game. Like he has like maybe about 40 to 50 minutes of screen time, I think. And it's like maybe like my really recent new game plus playthrough was about 30 hours. So yeah, that's pretty bad. So yeah, with Venom not being in the game as much as he should have, despite being one of the main selling points, it's underwhelming that he isn't there for a very long time. So yeah, and yeah, it's pretty self-explanatory how this is a negative. As with Venom barely the game, he barely gets any really development, and that leads into characterization. As I probably should have mentioned at the beginning of the video, but I still love this game. Even after in my last video on reviewing this game, I said I would go and replay the game and see if there was more like issue with the story, because a lot of people don't like the story, and I definitely found some more issues with the story. But I think the story is kind of okay, not really bad. But I still love this game, and just because it's flaws doesn't mean it's worthless. And now we want to Venom's characterization. Venom. Okay, listen. Venom's main gist is that both the host and the symbiote hate Peter Parker and Spider-Man. That's where the name comes from. Why they call themselves Venom. But Venom in this game doesn't really hate Peter. Well, there's definitely moments where he's angry. It's not. It's not really shown he is really hateful of Peter. In fact, Venom even wants Peter to join him for most of the time he's on screen, until right at the end where he says we'll just kill him anyway. And this is already, and this honestly is probably disappointing a lot of fans, because they want Venom treated the way they saw in the comics, maybe a lot, really, like no, and the fact that he's so wildly out of character from his original source material probably upset them a lot. And while I don't mind playing around with the rules a bit, like some issues, some things that people call issues, I don't necessarily find issues. Well, this is more to an extent, but Harry Osborn being Venom, I think could work. They didn't really do that, and the resistance to fire isn't really that much of a deal for me. I know it's one of the main weaknesses, but it's not really a big. But it doesn't really hurt me a lot, and it's really just, and it's pretty well defended by the writer, Brian Tahar, whose explanation is that making Venom walk through fire looks cool. If it starts the interpretation of the character well, then I don't mind bending the rules a bit. And Venom's mostly a problem for writing issues, so nothing surface level. It needs to be talked about. As far as characterization, Venom also doesn't exactly work. This isn't exactly. Venom's characterization also has several multiple motivations, all flip flop around at the same time. That leading me to question, well, what is motivation? Is it? I know in the long run it's to take over the world, but the way the symbiote presents itself seems to have a lot more motivations or different motivations at certain points that I don't even know if this was his main motivation. Taking over the world was his main motivation. There's this big build up to, and the thing, and as I said before, like the villain Venom is his name is derived from both the host and symbiote's hatred for Spider-Man, Peter Parker. But since Venom doesn't really hate Peter Parker or Spider-Man, the build up to the line "We are Venom" isn't as good because, well, what are you Venom to? What are you poisoning? And this is why Venom's characterization is widely, and what I'm trying to say is that Venom's characterization is way off his original counterpart. That I don't necessarily. Venom has been changed to be more of a demon, simply possessing Harry, just like he did for Peter. And this. And while people have used offenses like for Venom being the way he is, that when bonding to Peter he was introduced to the feeling of rage, well, of Venom, well, yeah, okay, I don't exactly know how to. Okay, let me start. While people make defenses saying like when bonded to Peter it was introduced to the feeling of rage, well, okay, but he didn't really introduce the idea to take over the world. And if we don't abide by the universe, the logic, the stuff and if we have to use sources outside the game, then we kind of have a problem on our hands. And Venom is so off. Venom just is extremely inconsistent. Venom's characterization is extremely inconsistent. Just to say, I'll just get it out of the way. Venom's character writing and characterization is very consistent and doesn't get enough development it needs to in order for these things to flourish. For any part of him to flourish. And I think the reason why the motivations are all over the place is that they were trying to take from different sources of Venom from all Spider-Man media. Now, the symbiote takeover feels like a massive homage to Web of Shadows. The way Venom says the way they say "we are Venom" bring back things back to the Ultimate things back to the OG classic comics, and the way the symbiote possesses Harry possesses people like a demon reminds me of the Ultimate run. And the problem this comes into is that they are all coming from different sources of the source material, meaning everything is stitched together without getting any part of those parts right. I know they did it out of love. This probably was out of love, but they try to appeal to so many fans by doing all of it, and in the long run, not doing any of it well. Yeah, so yeah, not very good. And third and final problem is the presence. Now, here's the thing. I can downplay Venom's screen time in case. Here's the thing. You can downplay Venom's. You would be able to downplay Venom's screen time in this game if he did have presence. And why is that? Well, let's think about the Way of Shadows. A lot of people talk about this one, and for fair reason, because the story means it goes balls to the walls. But we barely see Venom in the game. He shows up in the beginning. He shows up for a brief time in the beginning, briefly in the middle act, and he's gone to the end game. He has about as much screen time as this game's Venom. And the reason this ends up being mostly okay is because Venom's presence is felt across the entire game. He's the person he's the guy who started this entire plot line. He's the event. He is the event that started this, and he is the cataclysm for all the fun in the game. Compared to this game, you compare it to this game, and it's Craven who mostly has the presence in this game, because he's the bad guy for basically the first and second act of this game. And while people might say, "Oh well, Dr. Octopus in the first game, didn't get a lot of was only appeared during mostly the third act, and was briefly in second act, so yeah, it's why are you complaining about Venom?" Well, here's the difference. Dr. Octopus and Otto Octavius are the same person. Venom and Harry are two separate entities. Meaning screen time for Otto Octavius is screen time for Dr. Octopus. But since Harry and the symbiote are two different entities, screen time for Harry is not screen time for the symbiote. And the thing is, we see the symbiote directly in the beginning of the game, but we don't get to see the symbiote again until Mission 11. We spend a lot of hours without focusing on Craven. Even though in the beginning, even though Venom's meant to be the main villain of the entire game. And I think this proves one, and I think this shows one thing. It's not, you can't do the symbiote arc and the Venom arc in one game or movie. If it is possible, it's extremely hard to do. And I think why it's easier to adapt Venom into a show instead of a video game or a movie. I want you to think of each episode of a TV show as a comic book issue. You can have a episode to focus strictly on Peter the Black Suit, Peter getting rid of the Black Suit, and then an episode of Peter getting rid of the Black Suit, and then an episode of him fighting Venom. You can have several episodes focus on different parts of the symbiote arc, compared to this game where it tries to cram in them both into one game and has to focus on all of that. Leads to more undercooked stuff. Okay, well, with all that out of the way, how would I try to fix Venom in this game? Well, for screen time, there's three options. There's three options for this. One, you do only the symbiote arc, the symbiote Spider-Man arc in this game, and have an entire game of them taking down Venom. 2, you have to make the game longer in order to flesh things out, or and finally, you introduce Venom much earlier in the game. You introduce like symbiote Spider-Man way earlier in the game to help flesh out things more. I think it would be cool if like throughout the game, like maybe like when Harry goes like maybe shake Peter's hand, like a bit of the symbiote also like, you know, when he shakes his hand, like the symbiote then also feels Peter, kind of like a bit of the symbiote goes into Peter because it wants to check him out. You know, if he's a suitable like person for like taking the role, maybe like and throughout the rest of the game, you can hear like see visions of like something, you know, like aka like the symbiote, me like commenting on our progress throughout the game. I think that'd be cool. And as for Venom's characterization, you had to stick to one motivation. Just make sure it's one motivation. And how Venom's going to behave based on that motivation. If this is take over the world, fine. But honestly, I honestly know how, and if not, well, I don't know how they're going to do this whole symbiote takeover without the takeover the world motivation. But I don't know, like maybe it's like you know, the hatred from both the host and just like the symbiote gets so bad, so big that, you know, they said, you know what, we're gonna like spread. You know what, we're gonna take over the city and its citizens just to get back to Spider-Man and just have like all these symbiotes like just fuck with him, you know. It sounds like some comic book kind of stuff, but I don't know. I think it'll be fun. And as for presence, since he needs to the symbiote needs to incite more in the game. I know these solutions sound a bit too surface level, but I do think these things could like fix Venom a bit. Anyway, I still love this game. I don't think this is the worst version of Venom, but I can see why people might not like this version. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure to subscribe, comment, like, hit the notification bell so you can notify my future videos. Without further ado, bye bye.